Hey everybody, I thought today I would show you how I varnish my paintings. I know some people kind of struggle with this, and I struggled with it in the beginning as well until I found what worked for me. This is a 12 by 12 canvas that I'd poured a few weeks ago, probably almost a month ago actually. I try to let my paintings cure for at least 30 days before I varnish them. So I've still got the thumbtacks on the back of it to raise it up off the surface, just so that it doesn't stick to the surface that I have my project on. I like to use the Master's Touch brush. This is a 3-inch brush I buy at a Hobby Lobby, and it is the, I believe it's called the Golden Talon brush. It's $14.99 is the regular price, and then a lot of times Hobby Lobby has stuff 50% off. The one thing I will recommend, this is a brand new brush, I would recommend kind of pulling on the bristles a little bit, just to get the loose bristles off. And then as you're using the brush, especially in the first few times that you've used it, keep an eye on your project to make sure that you don't have any bristles that have come off in the varnish while you're working on your project. It's kind of very easy to miss those when you're working on it. So the goal of I use the Liquitex High Gloss Varnish, and the goal of this is to put about 3 to 4 coats on the project, and then when you're finished you have this really nice high gloss finish on your piece. And so this is kind of what we're going for, is this really nice pretty finish. It looks almost like resin, but it is not, and it is much easier in my opinion, and you can get a really nice finish with just the gloss varnish, and it's a much cheaper way than doing it with resin as well. And it's a pretty fast process. So my recommendation, and what I found that works for me, is to take a little disposable container, and then this will just be for my varnish. I do not recommend pouring it on your project and then moving it around with a brush. I found that I had a lot of problems with leaving brush marks on my project, and it's very hard to get it distributed before it starts to dry. This does dry very quickly, so I found the best way for me to use it is to put it in a container like this and then just dip my brush into the container. Generally what I will do is the sides of my project first. So I just dip my brush in and get varnish on it, and then I'll do the sides. And I'm not too concerned with the drips on the bottom side of it. I will go back once I'm done and just kind of wipe along that edge, because you don't want drips to hang off the bottom of it, because it will leave drips for sure. This is a fairly thick product. So I start by doing all 4 sides so that I know that I've got a nice coat to start with on those. And then once I get going, sometimes I only do maybe 2 or 3 coats on the sides. I'm mostly concentrating my efforts on the top of the project. So I start on one side, and then I just go across and then come back one more time. Try to stay out of the habit of going back and forth and back and forth. You can lightly go across if you see some brush marks, but you really just want to try to just go across once or twice and not mess with it too much. So I just kind of try to have a nice bright light so that I can see any lines that might be there. And then I'm just going to lightly go back across to make sure that I don't have any really strong lines showing in my varnish. And then that is it for the first coat. When I'm varnishing, what I do in between coats is I just put my brush into a baggie, and then that'll keep it wet so that when I'm ready to do my next coat, it's ready to go for me. I do not bother with cleaning it in between coats. As long as it's in this baggie, it will protect it from drying out. Once I'm completely finished with my project, I recommend that you clean it in mineral spirits first. The Liquitex varnish actually says that it's soap and water cleanup. I have not had a lot of success with that. I find that if I clean it with mineral spirits first and then wash the mineral spirits out with soapy water, my brush lasts a lot longer. I've ruined a couple of brushes because I just couldn't get them clean with soap and water. So I'm going to let this guy sit for probably about a half an hour to 45 minutes. And then I'll come back and show you how I do the second coat. And we'll see this till the end. Okay, I'm back to show you the second coat of varnish. What I generally do is I turn this 90 degrees so that I can go the opposite direction in my first brush strokes, that I can try to avoid having deeper brush strokes or marks showing on the canvas. So once again, just going to come back and gently go over the entire canvas back and forth. When you're working with a smaller canvas, it's a little bit more forgiving. You have a little more time to kind of go back and kind of look it over and make sure that everything is nice and smooth. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just do my edges without picking it up this time around, since I did not do that before I started. And like I said before, generally I only do maybe 2 or 3 coats on the edges, because I don't find that that, to me, is not as important as the top surface. Dropped a little drop there, and then I'll just go ahead and do this top edge. And now this coat will probably have to dry a little bit longer, so it'll probably sit about 45 minutes before it's ready for the 3rd coat. And then I'll take a look and see if I think that I should put a 4th coat on or not. And so once again, putting my brush back into the baggie to make sure that it stays moist. I also recommend that you wear gloves when you do this, because the varnish is quite sticky and it'll be all over your hands, and it's very hard to get washed off once you're finished. I'm just going to put the lid on my varnish and set that aside, and then we'll be back in about 45 minutes and give it a 3rd coat and see how it's doing. Hey everyone, it's Chris, and I'm back to show you the final coat of varnish on the painting that we've started. I forgot to mention that the first step that I do in varnishing is to clean the canvas with Windex. And I just use regular Windex, and I'm going to spritz this off camera. And then I just use a paper towel and clean that surface to make sure that I don't have any silicone residue or dust. And I wipe all 4 sides of it. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of color on the paper towel, but if you've let it cure for 3 to 4 weeks, that's not really an issue. It doesn't pull very much color, but you can kind of see that there's just a tiny bit of purple on my paper towel. So I just go ahead and I wipe everything off first, and I kind of let that sit aside to dry for a few minutes, because after you do this step, it is just slightly tacky. Like, you'll feel that it's kind of sticky, but it won't harm the painting. Just let it sit to the side to dry before you start to put your coats of varnish on. And then I'm going to show you this. So far, this is just 2 coats of varnish on this painting, and I have put 2 coats on the side, so I'm not going to be concerned with the sides on this final coat. Just want to make sure that I've got you. I kind of moved my camera a little bit, so hopefully that's in view for you. And this is just my Liquitex Gloss Varnish. My brush has been in the baggie just to kind of keep it nice and soft. And then I'm just going to go across the painting again, which is the way that we started the first coat. I'm just going to kind of lightly go across that to make sure that I don't have any lines showing. And then I'll continue to work my way down the painting. I'm just gently going left to right, and then once in a while I come back across from the right to make sure that I don't have any streaks showing. And I just want to make sure that I've got the entire surface wet. So it's good to do this in some good lighting so that you can kind of bend down and look across the painting and have the light catch it. That way you can look for any strands that might be from your brush, which there's one right there that I was able to catch when I bent over. So I'm just going to scrape that off to the side. Actually, I think that was a cat hair. Surprising that there would be cat hairs in my studio. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and I think, honestly, I think 3 coats is going to be really nice for this painting. It has a nice glossy sheen to it, which is what I was looking for, and it only took 3 coats to achieve that. So this should dry pretty nice and glossy like it is. So I'll kind of bring it up a little bit closer to the camera so that hopefully you can see a little bit close up. And I apologize, the light is kind of, let me tilt that just a bit. The light is kind of glaring from the window today. We've got some snow out here on the road, so it's kind of reflecting, but I think that looks really cool. I love how this painting turned out. So that's going to finish up this video then. It's got 3 coats of varnish on the top, 2 coats on the side. You can see even the sides look nice and shiny. And then I'll just let this sit to the side. It'll probably be dry within the day. It shouldn't take more than a couple of hours, really. And then when I store my paintings, I usually store them with parchment paper in between so that they don't stick to each other, because even after they're varnished and they've dried for quite some time, they still can tend to stick a little bit. So I usually put parchment paper in between to make sure that they're not sticking to each other. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks so much for watching.